Hello and good morning. Welcome to our newest lecture. This is lecture number 12 here in week 13. As you can see, there is nothing big due at the end of this week. Congratulations on that. Uh, what I would like to see is a couple of things. So we're going to talk about Kagan chapter 6, which is the last chapter in Kagan. And then we're going to talk about some of the difficulties that you all brought up in your writing this last week. Um, so the first thing I want to talk about is the book. So in the last chapter of Kagan, we're summing things up, right? We're talking about the strengths and weaknesses of each of the given academic disciplines, right? Each of the academic cultures, talking about current tensions. And I do think that this is where the book could use an update, right? Uh, because I think if you look around at current events, you do find that some of the influence that the sciences were wielding at the time that this was written have sort of disappeared in a lot of ways. You see much more often now that science is being questioned on a higher and higher level. Um, and I think that perhaps with you all having read this book, you'll be able to look at it and see, well, there's writing on the wall that something may be changing, something may be shifting another way again. So I hope that you will pay special attention to this chapter because it really sums up the whole book for us. Um, so that's a good thing to look at. I saw that all of you seem to, in your writing, be referring to difficulties that you had with the book. Um, I will say that you're juniors in college. You're going to read hard things, right? Uh, and that's a part of the whole thing, right? Is reading very challenging texts and coming away with only a partial understanding, right? I don't expect that you're going to be able to recite the whole thing word for word, right? I wouldn't want you to do that. What I do want you to do is come away having considered the questions that the book poses, right? And so if you're doing that, then you're doing the right thing. Yeah? You don't have to understand everything that Kagan says. I don't think that I understand everything that Kagan says necessarily. Uh, as imperfect as our understanding through language can be, uh, it's a little difficult to do all that. So I think that whatever understanding you're coming away with, that's what you should come away with. Yeah. And if it's a little hard to plow through, I understand. This is one of the shorter chapters, so you shouldn't have a whole lot of trouble with it, even if it still is a little dense. Um, Now, this is an honest account on the part of Kagan of the current tensions in the three cultures. Uh, he is writing at from a social science perspective because, as we noted before, he is a social scientist, and this is 10 years ago, right? So it's 2009, um, and things change over the course of 10 years. Um, 10 years ago, President Obama had just been elected, and things were looking a little bit different. Uh, so I think that if you pay special attention not just to the fact that Kagan is writing from a social scientist perspective, and the fact that things change over time, and that this book could probably use an update, right? Then you will find, I imagine, that uh, things will become much clearer to you in the book. Um, I also want you to pay special attention to your own individual field, right? So identify the things that your field faces um, that Kagan identifies, right? So if there are difficulties that Kagan points out in your field, I want you to make sure that you identify those difficulties so that you can understand some of the problems that historically your field has encountered. Um, so yeah, I think that that's a good start. Yeah. Um, Also, happy April Fool's Day. I'm not going to play a trick on you today. Although I thought about a couple of them, but some of you have less of a sense of humor than others, right? So I figured I would nix the tricks for today and just give you a normal day of class. Um, so I've also noted in your writing that some of you are really worried or anxious about the IMRAD paper. Um, it is big. It can be scary, right? But if you use the tools that you've been developing along the way, if you use things like your quote burgers and your abstract and free writing, I don't know if I've taught you about free writing. I think I have through your composition book prompts. So free writing basically is just writing down as much as you can on a given topic in a set time limit and trying to get it all down on paper, right? The benefit to doing this is that anything that's up here, right, cannot be accessed unless you get it on here, right? You need to get it on the laptop. So once you type it out, right, you can manipulate it, you can move it around, you can correct grammar, but anything that's still up here, you can't do that with, right? So through free writing, um, all you have to do is just do a sprint. Write as much as you can on the given topic. Maybe your topic is going to be the one that you wrote about for your abstract, or for your quote burgers, or about the CFP that you've written for or selected. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you pick something else, and that's fine too. But I want you to do as much free writing as you can leading up to this, so that you're not shocked when the time comes that you have to turn in a draft. And the first draft is due a week from Friday. Yeah. So uh, have that on your radar. Yeah. That you want to have a draft going. So um, free writing is a great way. Quote burgers are another good way, right? The 10 quote burgers you wrote, if they're still on that same topic, generally you can use those, and that's going to be a lot of your paper, right? Just explaining what those quotes mean if they go along with your argument. Yeah, so uh, a lot of that is going to be in the introduction. Yeah, so the introduction generally will include a literature review, and that is where you establish where your paper belongs in the scholarship. Yeah. So you'll be citing a lot of different people using their arguments, saying, this is what this person argues, this is what this person argues, this is what this person argues, and creating sort of a niche where your project goes, right? If you say, Kagan argues that the social sciences are clinging to the authority of the sciences while doing the work of the humanities. And then you find that another person writes that the humanities really are disappearing because of the primacy of science. And then if you update that and say, but recently, Scholar X over here has said that the sciences are becoming less popular, and with increased skepticism about climate change and um, about many other scientific conclusions that we have made over the years, uh, we're we're in a bit of a different state, and that's where my paper comes in, where I talk about the state that we're in right now. Yeah. So if you use the introduction and the quote burgers to create a large introduction that introduces your reader to the place that your scholarship comes in, then the methods and the results and the discussion are a much shorter portion of that paper. Yeah, you can make the introduction 30 to 40% of the paper and still have good methods, good results, good discussion. Yeah. So um, use those quotes as well as you can. Make a lengthy introduction to the quote. Quote a bunch quote a bunch of material. If it distills the argument, use ellipses between different sentences in the part that you want to quote. Right, ellipses is three dots. Right. you can do that, and that shows that you're skipping around in that quote, yeah, and not using the irrelevant parts. Um, and then make sure that any summary that you do of that quote, you summarize it at least double the length of the quote. Yeah, and if you do that, all of a sudden you're going to have 3 or 4 pages just in quotes. Yeah, in quote burgers at least. So I think that if you do that, you'll find that your 15 pages are filled up rather quickly, and it doesn't take a whole lot to do that. As far as the free writing, I would suggest, and I've used this to great effect before, to set a word count goal per day. Right? Maybe you want to write 500 words a day. Right? So if 500 words is your goal, for example, that's 2 pages a day. So over the course of 2 weeks, you will finish a draft of the paper if you write 500 words a day. And 500 words a day is not that much, right? You can do that. Yeah. You probably do that just in Facebook posts or in Twitter posts or whatever you're using these days. Facebook and Twitter are pretty much my mains. Beyond that, I don't get. I'm not very savvy. So um, yeah, that is pretty much what I have for today. Just make sure that you read chapter 6. Think about how it applies to your field. Pay special attention uh, to things that might be changing from the book. And then with the IMRAD, make sure that you set yourself a word count goal and try to get a draft done in the next 2 weeks. For your composition book questions, I have two for you today. One question is, I want you to design the ideal prank, right? So uh, don't talk about doing anything illegal or anything like that, but I want to hear your April Fool's Day pranks because I'm not playing one on you, right? So I think that it would be fun to hear about some of those. So for the first prompt, just write about a prank that you're doing uh, or that you would plan to do. Uh, for the second prompt, um, I would just like you to write about how you feel the class has gone. Um, write about maybe your favorite part of class, the things that you've learned in class or are taking away from class, anything like that. Just sort of give me an idea of how things are going for you in the class. Um, if this was an in-person class, generally I would be meeting with you, and we would have a conference and go over things one-on-one. I do want to make myself available if you want to do that. You'll see that I'm not physically in my office in Menard, but you can get a hold of me for virtual office hours. You just have to make an appointment, and we can do it on Skype. That's the general thing that I do when I'm teaching online. So if you would like to make an appointment to communicate one-on-one, I'm happy to do that via Skype uh, or some other way. If you have a way you prefer, let me know about that. But I'm happy to communicate with you one-on-one, to give you individual feedback about anything that you've got that you've written. Um, when you give me your rough draft of your paper, I will attempt to uh, get something back to you very quickly that gives you an idea of how things are going with it. If you have something specific in mind, that will help me guide my feedback for you. So if you say to me, this is too short, I know it's too short, let me know where I can improve, where I can expand, then I will be able to say, okay, this is where you can expand, this is where you can improve, these are the things that I'm seeing you doing, right? So feel free to send me in your email when you send the rough draft again a week from Friday. It's 2 weeks away. But feel free to think about the things that you need to improve in the paper so that when I get it, I can give you some timely feedback and get you back something that will really help you to finish writing that paper. Yeah, writing is a process, right? Uh, it's not a one-off thing that you do. Uh, it's something that the best things that you write will always come from iteration, not from just I was once inspired and did a free write and that's what I produced is just the final product. It doesn't happen that way, right? It requires editing, it requires revisiting, it requires time for you to think, right? So when you when you write a paper, right? When you write an academic paper especially, it requires some extra eyes. That's why when an academic journal is put out, it's peer reviewed, right? Because we want to make sure that we're getting the best form of the argument down on paper, not just any form of the argument. Yeah. So make sure uh, that when you are writing this paper, that you think about the things that maybe you don't know as well how to do. And then when you send in that rough draft, you can say, "Hey, Sensei Albright, these are the things that I think that I should improve on. Tell me what you think, and I'll be able to get you back that feedback very quickly." Um, so that's all I have for you today. So April Fool's prank. I want to hear about a good April Fool's prank from you. Second, how's class going? Is there anything that I can do to help you out? Um, Anything like that, complaints about the way I do things, I'm happy to hear those. I've been doing them for a long time, so sometimes something I'm doing is not really as helpful as it could be. So uh, if you have anything that you need to say to me, just let me know. I'm always happy to work with you on things. Yeah. So we will catch you on the next lecture. Feel free to email or request a conference, and we can do that at any time. Thank you. We'll see you. Is it 11 or 12? I don't know. I think it's 11.